Yeah. Oh, I need to get into video. Prima connessione, diciamo. Hi, Eric. How are you? Oof, I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Thanks for that. Sorry about that. Good. I'm
No,
doing.
you're good. You're good. You should be able to share your screen, or did you want me to share the screen with your slides? Whichever works better for you.
Let me go ahead and do that. Let me see if so. I'm going to do it from Google, and then give
All
me one
right.
second.
Hi, everyone. How are you guys doing today? Perfect, perfect, perfect. Well, if you were able to get into the session, then you're already registered, so you're good to go. And as always, if you have any questions, just Slack, email, drop a question in the chat, and we'll make sure that you get all the necessary information to make sure you get credit for each of your sessions, recordings, and the X, Y, and Z. But yeah, I'm going to hand it over to an incredible person here today, Eric, speaking on the Go Giver Entrepreneur. And I hope you guys enjoy. I think it'll be an amazing session. I'll give the floor to you.
Thank you, Shrod. Hey, everyone. Can everyone see my screen just fine? Just a thumbs up would be great. Cool. Awesome. And I'm glad you can hear me too, it sounds like. So glad to have you all here, and I'm really excited to share a little bit about uh, a few frameworks that I think are really impactful when it comes to building a business that's not just thriving from transactional value, but really through authenticity, partnerships, and again, going back to the authenticity, just the influence that you can provide from there. So we're really going to be talking about how to shift from a scarcity-driven transactional thinking to value-centric, relationship-first business building, anchored in generosity, trust, and magnetic influence. Before we dive in, just a little bit about me. I am Eric. I want to my goal in life when I was, at a very young age has always been to make an impact in the world in some sort of positive way. I never knew really how. And so I thought that the best way I could do is through business and ultimately have had a lot of opportunities to help businesses, large tech companies like Visa and Google drive partnerships and partner strategy. And then also get my MBA as well. And through those experiences, I've shifted and pivoted to becoming a transformational coach. Not just transformational from a life perspective, but also from a business perspective, taking all those things that I've learned throughout the years and distilling it in a way that can help entrepreneurs and creatives and people with ambitions to live out their dreams to actually conjure them up and then bring them to life. So I'm really excited to talk to you. I think this is going to be a great group. And I'm also going to be wanting to get this a little bit of make this presentation a little bit engaging as well. And so I'll be asking questions throughout. No pressure to answer, but I think that some of these questions will be great for you to reflect reflect upon, write down some thoughts. And if you want to share with the group, just please, I would say use the raise the hand button via Zoom and I'll take a look. And if I'm looking to the side, it's because I see all your faces on the side of my computer on that side. So forgive the shift in my gaze. Um, Before we dive in into any of the models, I want to ask you a question that I love asking founders. Uh, what if giving was actually your greatest growth strategy? What if your next opportunity doesn't come from more hustle, but from more generous giving and how you lead, connect, and show up? And so, with those questions, this is the lens that we're going to explore today, not just as a nice idea, but actually as a high leverage growth system grounded in real world business strategy. And as you'll see today, it's not about giving away, it's about giving the right value and in the right ways in order to build trust, influence, and the ripple effects of impact. So with that said, let's take a deeper look at the internal shifts that make this work possible. So these are going to be core ideas that I think will help ground some of the some of the concepts that we'll talk about. And I wanted to share this with some actual kind of business and data points. So before we dive into today's framework, I want to ground this conversation in something very important. And that is why this topic is not just an interesting topic, but in my opinion, it's absolutely essential in today's business landscape. Whether you're building a company, a movement, a consulting practice, the data is telling us loud and clear, business success today is being driven by trust, relationships, and value creation. It's not just products or performance metrics. I've seen that in my experience at Google, and I've seen it in my experience at Visa, and I've seen it done at those companies when they don't build upon those foundations. And so what the data is showing us is that from the insight number, the first insight is partnerships fuel business growth. A recent study from impact.com showed that companies intentionally investing in partnerships saw a 29% average annual revenue growth over a 2-year span. And that's really not just a nice to have. It shows that it's a scalable growth engine. And it validates exactly why we're talking about strategic generosity and relationship driven growth today. The next insight, authentic leadership, about authentic leadership, basically it's showing us that it's not just about being kind or vulnerable, it's really a performance driver. And so companies with authentic leaders see 26% higher engagement and a 20% bump in productivity. And why? I think that's because people thrive when they trust the people they work for. And I'm sure you can think reflect on
Don't
your
write on that. I'll give you some paper.
uh, I think you can reflect on your own experiences when you think about that, of how an authentic leader can really motivate and inspire you. But I think that when leaders show up as themselves, others feel like they can that it's safe to do the same. And that unlocks loyalty, unlocks motivation, creativity, and collaboration. The third insight, this one I think really gets to the heart of today's topic. According to BCG, they did a global study on business ecosystems. 52% of failed ecosystems were disrupted by a lack of trust, not by poor strategy or product. And the flip side is that 73% of successful ecosystems had trust as a core pillar. So I think this really goes to show that trust is not just a soft skill, it's the bloodstream of sustainable business growth. And when businesses build trust into the foundation of how they collaborate, they outperform those they rely on, that those businesses that rely on just transactions. And lastly, innovation. A culture of trust unlocks creativity. One example that I really love is Nature Metrics. You may or may not have heard of them. I didn't hear about them until I was trying to find a good example for this, but it's really fascinating. Basically, Nature Metrics is a startup that uses high-tech environmental DNA to monitor biodiversity. What that means, I'm not fully sure. But their success isn't just about their tech. And that's what's really cool about this example, is that their success is really grounded on trust-based collaboration with companies like Unilever and Nestle. And that trust enabled them to co-develop meaningful solutions for ecological challenges. So when trust is present, innovation thrives. And when it's missing, it kind of withers. So what we're going to be talking about today is how to build value-first partnerships, how to lead with authenticity, and how to create ripple effects of trust. Again, I don't think this is just good feel-good philosophy. This is what the data confirms that creates thriving, resilient, future-facing businesses. So before we dive into some of the frameworks, I want to chat about a good example from a company that I'm sure many of you have heard of, HubSpot. And so HubSpot, this is a great example because they grew from a startup to a market leader, not just through product, but through their partnership ecosystem. Their partnership ecosystem consisted of resellers, educators, community content creators, and they gave away massive value when they started, and they continue to do so, where they're giving free courses, certification programs, blog content. And their strategy was basically teach the market, empower partners, and the revenue will follow. That sounds kind of, I think, from as a business owner myself, when I first kind of started to live this principle, I think it sounds really scary to believe in that the revenue will follow after the value creation. But I think once you start realizing it and even looking into your own business models, you'll start seeing that that's so true. And so they created thousands of jobs in their partner ecosystem and positioned themselves as a hub for broader value in their network. And they scaled to 2 billion by just teaching, partnering, and building trust at every touch point. I don't think that they scaled because they had the best tech. I think they scaled really because they built the most trusted ecosystem. So something I want you to reflect on before we dive into the meat of this is, what would shift in your business if you prioritize teaching, empowering, and partnering as your primary strategy rather than just selling? Um, and we're going to open up for if anyone has any thoughts on that right away, but if not, feel free to just kind of sit with that question. Again, what would shift in your business if you did prioritize teaching, empowering, and partnering as your primary strategy? So now that we've seen what this looks like in the real world with the HubSpot story, I want to give a visual metaphor for the shift we're really making today. And this is what I call the value ripple model. Basically, it's a progression from transactional business to relational, and then eventually to transformational business. At the center of everything is your authentic presence and the value you give without attachment. This is where the Go Giver journey starts. I know we haven't talked about the Go Giver yet. Some of you may have heard of the book. It's a fantastic read. We'll dive into that in just a moment, but that's really where the journey starts, with intention, with alignment, and service first action. And that value it doesn't just stay static. It actually radiates outward. And so the second ripple is trust and relational depth, where you stop being just a vendor, start becoming a trusted advisor, a trusted collaborator, or a community builder. And that creates your next ripple, influence and visibility. People start amplifying your work, referring you, partnering with you. This is where your business really starts to scale through service and not push. And finally, the outermost ripple is the growth and scale ecosystem expansion. And this is where your impact reaches beyond your direct clients. It's where value multiplies across partnerships, communities, and industries. And each of these layers maps directly to the Go Giver laws, which we're about to talk about next. So this isn't just a concept; it's really a practical pathway to build thriving business through service, generosity, and high trusted collaboration. So let's dive into those laws. And before I jump into this, has anyone heard of this book before, the Go Giver? Feel free to raise your hand. Okay, awesome. Good news is that it's actually a very short book, very fun read. It's a fictional story about a young salesman who's trying to land this account, and he just simply cannot land it. And he seeks out a very famous consultant to help him, and he teaches them these principles. And at first, when I read it, I'll be honest, and that's why I'm really excited to have a discussion if everyone's willing to share and share thoughts as we go through these laws. At first, when I read it, I definitely was like, I don't know, I need conviction on this stuff, because basically it sounds like what it's saying is that if I just give, I guess like it's just going to happen that like, that I'm just going to get the value back somehow. Or if I give, what about the boundaries that I should put? What about managing my business in a cost-effective way? There was a lot of questions like that. And I hope you actually have a lot of that internal dialogue, that uncomfortable feeling inside, if you do, through some of these. And if you do, please share them. I think that would be great to have that discussion, because after really reflecting on my experiences, some of the experiences of my clients, what I've really have seen is that these are true laws. So let's get really practical here. You've seen the ripple metaphor like I showed you in the last slide, but now what does that actually look like in terms of strategy and daily like leadership behavior? And so the Go Giver framework gives us that clear roadmap, in my opinion. And these five laws are what allow the ripple and that expansion. And basically it's grounded on trust, value, and relational scale. So the first value is, or the first law is the law of value, which basically reminds us that we must give more in experiential, emotional, or relational value than we take in payment. This is what really anchors the entire business in trust. The next law, the law of compensation, teaches us that growth comes from reach and quality of service, not just effort. Serve more people well, and the idea is that scale will follow. And the next law, the third law, is the law of influence. This shows us that when we prioritize the success and interest of others first, basically influence expands naturally and it's not manufactured and it's not earned. And as we do so, value will come back in return. And that leads us to another law, which is the law of authenticity, which is really critical, especially in today's day when there's in the advent of, well, a few years of advent of AI being around, and kind of the way that the world is just so saturated with so much noise. Authenticity is critical in a world that where polish and posturing and is a key point. Your most powerful business asset is really your honest, aligned presence. And the last law, the fifth law, the law of receptivity, is often hardest for givers, and it's really kind of interesting because basically, if you're going to give, you must also be open to receiving. It sounds very intuitive, but when you really break it down, you can see that there might be some resistance inside. Basically, opportunities help praise wealth. This is how the ecosystem completes its loop. And we're going to dive into each of these laws through looking at several well-known businesses. Now, definitely there's room for debate on some of these, but I think the principle still stands. So let's dive into them. Before I do, does anyone have any thoughts on this? Any questions based off of this initial introduction? Any interesting ideas come up of resistance towards whether this might kind of seem too fluffy or pie in the sky thinking? Awesome. Well, I'm going to jump right into these laws, and we're going to get to doing some actual group work later. Um, so let's start with the law of value. Basically, the law of value says give more in value than you take in payment. Now, with a show of hands, I really would love, does this make sense to everyone? Does this seem logical to you? Do you believe in that? I mean, great. I love the thumbs up. I think it's really fascinating, and I love this law, especially from, I think when you really break it down into working with small businesses. I think that's the beauty of it, is that this law really does shine in there, where there's more value given than taken in payment a lot of times. And this isn't just about undercharging, it's really about over delivering in experience, emotion, and presence. So think about Apple. Yes, their products are at a premium, but the value isn't just in specs. It's the design, the simplicity, the feeling of elegance, how it integrates into your lifestyle. That's why people don't just buy a phone, they buy an identity. And so I want you to ask yourself, where are you creating that feeling of value beyond the transaction in your business? I think that's what really builds loyalty and pricing power. I see some comments in the chat, and I think just cool, awesome. I'm glad some conversations are going. One of the questions I see, and I just want to connect to it. How does the Go-Giver laws apply to different businesses? For example, therapeutic healing compared to marketing of a product. I love it. I love it. I want to come back to that when we get to the working session, because I think we can really kind of have a good discussion on that. But I love that. I learned that teaching over selling builds confidence in your skills. Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, let's go to the next law. The next law is the law of compensation. And basically, this law says that your income is directly tied to how many people you serve and how well you do it. And so I think Canva is really a brilliant case study. They grew from a simple idea that and then they built that idea into a multi-billion-dollar business by making design accessible to millions. And I don't think that they just sold features. I think that they democratized creativity, and their freemium model expanded their reach, which was fascinating. So think about that. A lot of these companies, yes, they're trying to generate users, and they're doing it in very technical ways a lot of times with their marketing and getting people. But the idea of giving, you can see it in like what a lot of companies do with their freemium models. And Canva is a great example. It basically, by offering that freemium model, it expanded their reach and those they served, and they became loyal and paying evangelists after. And so think about your business. The question I would say is, where can you simplify access to your value so you can serve more people deeply and effectively? The next law, the law of influence, teaches us that when we place others' interests first, our influence grows organically. And it's not through power plays, but it's really through trust. And I think Patagonia is a fantastic example of this. They basically are a living embodiment of it. They didn't just sell jackets. They stood for something. They put sustainability and ethics ahead of profit. And they even gave away the company. Ultimately, the founders, Yvon Chouinard, he gave the company away to serve the planet. And what happened? Their customer trust, loyalty, and cultural influence basically exploded. And so with this law, the thought that I would have is, how can you let your business become a signal of service and deeper purpose? And by thinking of that, I think that's where your true influence lies. And so I think that might go to one of the examples, or one of the questions earlier about how does this apply to therapeutic healing, compared to like marketing a product. It's, when you do become that signal, really you build on your influence, and it might be micro-sized at first, but it does grow. And so going back to the idea of the ripple effect, you do get to go to scale as you kind of base yourself off this foundation of authenticity and trust. So that brings us to the next law, the law of authenticity. And basically this reminds us that you are the most powerful asset in your business, not your offer, not your website, and truly not even your product. It's you. Ben and Jerry's built their brand on personality, honesty, and values. And people follow them not just for ice cream, but also for what they stand for: community, justice, and joy. And so authenticity really does create that emotional resonance. And I have these guitars in the background, and I don't know if it would if I could show it to you, but what's really interesting is this concept of resonance. I don't know if any of you are musicians, but if you are a musician, you have to usually, before you perform, you usually are tuning your instrument. And one way that you can do it with a guitar, and I'll just actually pull it off to show you, is when you're tuning, this string on the second level is an A note, and the first string right here is an E note, the very top one. Now, if I'm tuning it, I can play these things called harmonics. I don't know if that comes through, but you can hear it kind of is a little bit off. What's fascinating is that because I'm trying to tune and get into that vibration with that note, if I start tuning it, you'll actually hear it go whoa, 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 and then it'll start like shortening the wavelengths. And it's really fascinating because I think that really applies to authenticity, especially when I talk about emotional resonance. People are attracted to vibrations. They are connected to it. We might not even recognize that, but when we say that you just click with somebody, or a message comes and it really touches you, it's because you are like that note. You're tuning to that resonance, and you get online with that resonance. And think about that from a customer standpoint. Your customers and people really do follow you when they feel emotionally safe with you. So what would change in your brand if you showed more human, more real, and more you? Again, just going back to the idea of AI right now, a lot of stuff that I've been reading about has been talking about, from a marketing standpoint, has been AI and marketing. And I think that's really an interesting topic, because you will start seeing brands basically use AI in many different ways, which isn't bad. It's the way that things are going. But there's a question on how does authenticity show up when you're using something that doesn't have that part of that human part to it. And I think it still does. And that's the beauty of it. It's like going back to the idea that basically, you know, that question that I asked earlier, it's like, what would change in your brand if you showed more human, more real, and more you? It's and you're the biggest asset. So we can talk more about how to actually put that into practice in just a moment. Law of receptivity, that's the final law. And actually one of my favorites, and one that really kind of blew my mind when I really, really reflected on it. And it's actually one of the laws that a lot of go-givers struggle with. If you give freely, you must also receive freely. That's how energetic and strategic loop completes itself. And so think about that. If you give freely, you must receive freely. And I'm not saying free in the sense that you're not going to get a return, or you're not going to get customers or paying customers or whatnot, but it's the idea of behind the scenes. How are you capping yourselves in the back of your mind of receiving? And how does that come out to play? Because it is in your subconscious, how does that come out to play as you go to market with your business? So Airbnb is a good example. They thrive because it's a balanced value exchange platform. If you really think about it, guests give feedback, hosts receive it. People trust both sides. The system basically works because both giving and receiving are honored. And many of us unconsciously block receiving. Like I was saying earlier, that could be money, that could be help, that could be praise, that could be visibility. But receiving is really what allows your ripple to grow. So ask yourself, where might you be resisting receiving, and how could opening to it amplify your business and your leadership? So now that we've explored the go-giver laws and seen how they come to life in companies like Apple, Canva, Patagonia, Ben and Jerry's, and Airbnb, it's time to anchor those ideas into one of the most practical growth strategies you have available, which is strategic relationships. And this is where I feel like I've had a lot of experience working at larger companies in strategic relationships and partnerships specifically. And I think this is where I've seen a lot of growth opportunities, as well as like a lot of businesses actually struggle and can ultimately struggle in growth when they don't value their partnerships and build upon those strategic relationships. So if we return to the value ripple model from earlier, if you recall, basically remember that trust and relational depth were at the center of business transformation. Again, this isn't theory, it's strategy. So if you go back to the HubSpot story, they didn't just grow because of their product, they grew because they built an ecosystem of partners, educators, content creators, and collaborators. That ecosystem became their distribution engine. So again, you don't need $1 billion platform to apply this. The same is true whether you're a coach, consultant, healing therapist, artist, or even a team leader. Your network is your multiplier. Strategic relationships don't mean handing out business cards. It really means showing up with value, service, and intentional generosity. That's how trust is built. And that's how referrals start to flow. That's how collaboration emerges organically. And strategic relationships, basically, when you consistently give in your ecosystem, you create what I call relational gravity. So people start coming to you and pulling into you those different opportunities and wanting to amplify your work. And this is the power of compounding trust. It's the most undervalued asset in entrepreneurship, in my opinion. And if you're still thinking that growth only comes from better funnels, new products, or visibility hacks, this is your invitation to shift, because the entrepreneurs and leaders who scale the most sustainably and are not the ones chasing just more, they're the ones who build deeper trust and more meaningful partnerships. So here's where I hope we can start getting, let's start engaging with the group. And I want you to take 30 seconds to a minute, whatever you need, and answer these questions. Who in your current network could you serve more deeply without pitching, just offering value and or connection? So write one name, one action, one opportunity to give today. And then let's see how that ripple of trust looks like in action. So take just a second to do that. I'm going to pay attention, peer into the chat room real quick. Yeah, no, definitely. New comment. This is great. As far as the law of authenticity, my clients have always appreciated an empathetic connection and being heard, being versus being treated by number. Absolutely. But it can make difficult to maintain boundaries and manage time. So you sometimes need to be more go with the flow versus strict time management. I think that's really fascinating. And we're going to actually talk about in this next example something that I think is another mindset shift that maybe I haven't called out as strongly in the deck, but the idea is that we think our as a coach and kind of diving into the world of psychology, what I've learned is that, you know, the our subconscious has a lot of power over us, and there's a lot of perspectives and things that we believe that actually can be shifted. Like, for example, what is the definition of value? If you think about it from when you're a child to like as you are now, like that perspective has shifted. And it's the same thing in terms of time and value given back in terms of when does it actually arrive and how does it look like. We'll talk about a few examples in just a moment, but I think and I'd love to hear your stories, but I think this next story from one of my clients, I think will kind of really drive that point home. Ooh, I love these coming through. If you don't mind, I'm going to read some of them. I can serve my legacy birthing project moms. I can give them more training and resources. Love it. I need to connect with board members to inspire productivity. I love it. Um, I also just it caught my eye again what that comment about maintaining boundaries and managing time. I love that, and that's actually a discussion I had the other day about these topics. I think I want to come back to that and just when we have a discussion. Let me share a story from one of my clients who is a senior leader at a major tech company and in the accounting division. So basically, she found herself in a deeply dysfunctional work environment. I mean, we're talking about silos, blame shifting, and checked out leadership team. And this is her leadership team that is the C-suite leadership team. So very, very strategic, very needed for strategic direction. And despite it all, she kept showing up with integrity and service. Truly, she was always often taking work that was far beyond her role or scope to support her team and to also keep the culture alive. And at one point, we even explored whether being the go-giver was sustainable or even the idea that maybe it might be naive in such a toxic system. But she stayed anchored in trust and in generosity and in value first leadership, even without the immediate recognition. And that's when everything really shifted. A new CAO joined the company and immediately saw what she had been carrying. Really suddenly, the very qualities that had gone unacknowledged became her differentiator. And she was praised publicly, recognized as a culture leader, and positioned as the new CAO's right hand. Most of her peers, those who were operating transactionally, they were let go, and she on the other hand was elevated. And so there's a few key reflections off of this that I want to call out and kind of let your thoughts marinate on them because I think they're very fascinating. Basically, the idea is service first leadership compounds even if the payoff is delayed. And just like in her story, you know, she was giving, and many times she would come to our coaching session saying, I just feel like this is like for nothing. But what's fascinating is how things come back in value in return. And the fact that, you know, maybe she didn't have the value like at the time when she was going through those stresses of trying to keep things alive, trying to often take on, you know, like taking on work of others just to support her team. Maybe her value in that part of time was actually like, I wish someone could just take this off my plate. And she didn't get that value back during that time. But I think what she saw and some of the feedback she gave after was that in her own words, she said that, or in her way of saying it, she explained how value comes back sometimes not in a linear way and sometimes not in a way that really makes sense, but it always pays off exponentially. The other key reflection is that trust and authenticity are usually long games, but they always win. The go-giver principles, they often don't work immediately, but they always work eventually. Again, the idea behind it is that those are laws. Those are laws that are systems that will eventually obey, and things just tend to lean that way. So the question I would love for you to reflect on is, where in your business or leadership are you giving generously without knowing yet when or how the ripple will return? Think about how you're doing it already, and first off, give yourself kudos for doing that, but recognizing that where you're giving generously, that is the beauty of, is that that would be basically where you are your most authentic self, and pay attention to that strength and how you can leverage that and start leading with that a little bit more. So think about what would shift if you trusted the long arc of value-based leadership. What would shift if you started to look at value not as transactional, not as immediate, but as something that comes through in time? So now that we've talked about the go-giver laws and how powerful trust-based ecosystems are, let's take this action, let's take this concept into action. And so this slide is your relational value map. It's a practical tool. It's very simple to start identifying where your ripple can begin right now in your current relationships. So if you have a piece of paper handy at hand, please feel free to write 3 different columns, or actually 4, if you want to do multiple people. First column could be just name. Second column, how you currently engage. Third column, how you could add more value. And the last one is, what ripple could that create? And so when you think about the first column of how you currently engage with people in your network, ask yourself, are you mostly reactive? Do you engage inconsistently? Or maybe there's someone you haven't connected with in a while, but should. And think of that person and consider how you currently are engaging in that relationship. Next, in the second column, ask yourself, how could I add more value to that relationship? It doesn't need to be complicated. And that's why I've listed a few, what I call micro missions, right below, just as examples. Feel free to adopt them and change them for your own. But basically, there's ideas that have also been mentioned in the chat, where it's, share a resource or a tool with someone in your network. Maybe make a referral or offer an introduction. In the Go Giver book, you'll come across the idea is that, or as the story goes, the salesman actually gave a referral to a competitor, and he questioned that throughout the book, and then ultimately that referral came back around and actually served him more value than he ever gave. So it's pretty fascinating. So there's a few other missions that you could do. Send a thoughtful message of appreciation, that goes a long way. And then receive feedback or support openly and with gratitude. So the third column is another area for where you can reflect, which is, what ripple could that create? Maybe it deepens a partnership, maybe it opens a door, maybe it sparks trust that turns into a future opportunity you can't even see yet. And feel free to just reflect on what that ripple could create, what you want it to create, and allow yourself to see the dots and how they connect across, of you giving the value and how that actually could bring to fruition that what you want to conjure up. And so this is how Go Giver strategy becomes momentum. It's not through scale first, but through sincere contribution and multiplied relationships. So if you're open to it, actually, I would love to see if some of you could share some ideas on how you could enable or employ this relationship value map, and maybe some ideas of how of some people that you can serve, and how that ripple what ripple could that create. Any thoughts on how this might apply. And we can even go back to any thoughts on at this point. I think it'd be great. Any questions or thoughts on the go-giver strategies and maybe some disconnects or things that you want to call out about it. Awesome. I'm going to check the chat real quick. And I hear you. I definitely hear you. Of all you're doing is keeping the dream alive, and I get that very much so. In another business of mine, I feel you when you say that comment, and sometimes all that you can do is keep the dream alive. Um, but the beauty of the go-giver, and I wouldn't say but, I would say and actually, and the beauty of the goal giver is that you can always look for opportunities to give a little bit more value. Again, it doesn't have to stretch you thin. It's just an opportunity for you to see how you can serve more, and then sit back and just test it out, see how it works, see what comes through, and do it in a way that feels the most authentic to you and that makes sense for you and your business. Um, let's see, I only have 3 employees, including myself, but I had to learn how to approach different personalities in different ways. Oh, that's fascinating. Um, if you're open to it, Maria, could you share a little bit more with us about how you took that approach and how that worked? And feel free to call it out in the chat if you don't feel like sharing with voice. Ooh, just reading the next one, Abigail. Realizing how this concept has actually played out in your work. Oh, that's great to hear. I think it's really interesting. I've seen it definitely a lot of times throughout my work, and it's just really funny how it is a great refresher because all of this stuff is very intuitive. It's very, in a lot of ways, it just seems to make sense, but it also seems to be something that you've known for a while. So I totally understand that. Um, the thing that is central is the belief in the cause behind the product. I agree. I agree. And going back to AI, I think that's what's an interesting marketing tactic right now and marketing strategy is authenticity. A lot of larger companies, as you've probably seen, and it kind of can get annoying, is like you start seeing them really like Unilever, for example. They are deepening their dollars and budget and kind of cutting deeper into the idea of using influencers because they know that they need the authentic connection with their client base. And also when you look at it from a smaller scale, like from more SMB, small, medium-sized businesses, a lot of businesses are showing the behind the scenes of the entrepreneur working on their business. Um, I currently run a candle brand as well, and it's been fascinating because one of the ways that I've generated more connections, more followers, and I'm actually still waiting for different value to come through on this. But one way that actually I saw from a number standpoint in marketing is when I posted a video of not just a beautiful candle and not with a beautiful background, but actually a video of myself sharing the story behind it, and people really connected with that. And I think that's how a lot of small, medium businesses can actually have a leg up on competition, especially if they're larger, is because they can share that authentic approach and what it is to actually go through the toil of building a business. Um, Laura, I'm going to read your comment. As an artist illustrator, when I give a business card, I also include a hand-drawn personalized sketch portrait. Oh, that's so cool. And affirmation or compliment. Oh yeah, then had these little sketches shared on Instagram. I'm still thinking about how to incorporate something small like this for my creativity coaching services. That's cool. That's really nice. Definitely something that keeps you memorable. I love it. Um, awesome. I'm
Hi,
going to,
Eric.
yeah.
This
Um,
is Maria. I didn't want to interrupt while you were talking, so I just waited.
no, glad you did. Thank you for doing it.
As far as like the like adapting to different personalities, I learned that working in like corporate as a quality assurance specialist, where like I had to approach different people who like I guess wouldn't take feedback a certain way. Like you know how some people take it more as in like an insult or like offensively versus like what you're trying to convey. And
Yeah.
so based on that job alone, like I kind of like learned different ways to like give feedback without offending
Mm,
or without making anybody feel inadequate or insecure. And so like I guess how I'm implementing that is like with my front desk. She has like a very, I guess, fiery personality in the way that like if it's worded in a different tone, like she might like not accept it or she might like shut down. And so like I have to be like very bubbly with her and like very like compassionate as well as like um giving her like solutions versus hey, this is what you did wrong type thing. And
Mm,
so like I never like point out what it is that was done wrong. I'm just like, hey, can I show you a different way of doing this? And then like she's like, sure, let's see if it's easier. Like she'll take whatever is easier versus me just pointing out something like a mistake she made or something like that.
yeah.
So any way to make her job easier, um, she's more receptive to it because she's the work smarter, not harder. And
Yeah.
then as far as like my insurance billing specialist, she's more factual. She needs facts, she needs information. She doesn't care about all the fluff in between. And so like it's more of like, okay, work mode, doesn't care about small talk.
Yeah.
I
That's
hope
really
that
cool.
helps.
No, it does. I think that's a fantastic point that you're making, and I think that's what's interesting. Like the Go Giver is not really just about product to consumer; it's leadership as well. And I think there's a few things that I would like to reflect back to you that I think are just to call out that I think are really great about your what you just shared. Um, Number one, I think is like the presence of you as a leader and how you were able to view the personalities of these different people underneath you or working with you. And I think it's really fascinating how in dedicating some observational energy in that way, you're learning these different techniques of actually how to help them to perform better and to actually support maybe ultimately you in the end, maybe your teams, maybe teams that aren't even related to your team. But just cool how that actually really does drive more business. And I'm curious with when you were working with that one employee that you said was a little bit more fiery, how did you was it like an iterative kind of approach when it came to like figuring out what actually worked with connecting with her, or was it like an aha moment? And if so, where did that come from?
Honestly, I think it was more trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because personally, like I have different learning styles, and so like you have to like take into consideration the best way that they learn, whether they're visual, whether they prefer to like to read it, write it down, things along those lines. And then, so it was like a trial and error with that. And then also just seeing how my reactions affected her learning ability.
Mm.
Um, so that was another thing because I have to work on not reacting, which is difficult sometimes when like you see something being done wrong, but you don't want to like immediately like swoop in and react. You just want to kind of like wait for it to settle and then go over it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's mainly like paying attention, seeing what works, and then sometimes buttering them up with like a coffee or something will like help them drop their guard so they let you in long enough to like go over it.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. And it's great to see even like the principles of the Go-Giver to work in that example. The fact of giving feedback, although sometimes that could be perceived as like, oh, calling somebody out, it's a gift if you really think about it. Now, in order to give that gift, you gave another gift, which was I loved how you explained about giving coffee. It's like if you were looking at it from a just completely transactional, almost like two cups, like I'm pouring here, she better pour back this way. It doesn't work out that way sometimes. Like it really sometimes is what you realize is it's not about pouring from the same liquid from different cups, the same amount of liquid. It's actually about there's a funnel that connects from you to her and a funnel connecting you from you to other energetic things in the universe that are giving you value. And sometimes that is people softening. Sometimes it is people um, opening themselves up for a deal. And sometimes it actually comes through in ways that I think what's kind of something that we shouldn't discount ever in business is how things happen, not because we actually did anything about it, but because it just came and we were able to, because we were in that vibrational energy of looking at things from a good perspective, looking at things from I'm just giving value. You start also keeping that last law that I shared, the law of receptivity in mind, where you need to also keep in mind that you should be open and looking for those opportunities to open. And sometimes that might mean an opening in a coworker or a person that you're managing, them opening up to the feedback that you want to give and how that can actually drive value in the business. Um, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that comment. And uh, I am heading to our last slide, which I think this is something that for me really matters. I think, and hopefully it resonates with you too, where this isn't about what we're selling. It's not about a lot of other things aligned with that. Basically, it's about who you're becoming as a value-driven leader, and uh, basically who you're becoming through your work. And the go-giver philosophy isn't just about actions. It's really about identity. It's about leading with generosity, like we've shared. It's about building with trust, and allowing your business to grow from service and not force. And so, oops, it's not coming through. Let me click on this way. So basically, there we go. So as you walk away from today, I'd want you to carry not just your action plan, but your identity as a value-driven leader. Um, are you a builder of high trust ecosystems? Are you a catalyst for ripple effects of impact? Are you a generous giver who leads with service? All these things of who you're becoming, those go back to that other one of the laws and one of the things that we've talked about earlier, which is basically your greatest asset truly is yourself. It really is. And uh okay, looks like good conversations are happening. So yeah, thanks today for today's session, and thanks for those who shared in the comments and also with the group. If today's session resonated with you and you're exploring anything with coaching or just want to have the conversation going, please reach out to me. I'd love to connect, just even to keep the conversation going. I think there's so many things behind the scenes that from a psychology and a human approach to things that can really drive actual incremental value in our businesses. So thanks everyone for your engagement, and looking forward to staying connected.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was amazing. I was actually taking notes myself. That was some really great insights. And like Eric said, you guys, there are ways to connect with him. Please reach out if you have any additional questions about anything else going on with Startup Spring Training, connecting with Eric, getting the recording. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And
One quick note, real quick. Sorry to
go ahead, go
interrupt.
ahead.
But hosting another session tomorrow about flow state and about using flow in business. And feel free to jump on that. It's going to be tomorrow. Take a look at the schedule. It'll be there, and have another great discussion with you all. Thank you. Thanks, Sherrod.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Can't wait for that as well. All right. You guys have a great rest of your day.
See you all. Thanks, Sherrod. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. And